Hi everyone, this is Stephanie Weaver. Thank you very much for joining me for today's webinar. And I'd like to just double check one thing real quick to make sure that, so you should be able to be asking me questions and I will be happy to answer them as we go along. So thanks so much for being here today. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, or if you're watching this on replay, we're really happy to have you with us. And it appears that something is wrong with my screen sharing, so give me just a moment. Try that again. Okay, technology is not working for us today. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. My apologies. Hi, everyone. If you're waiting for the live webinar on 10 everyday things that make migraines worse and what to do instead, I will be right with you. I am just rebooting my PowerPoint, which for some reason was not sharing properly. So we will be right with you. So just hang in there 1 second. All right, we're going to give that another try, see if that works this time. And if it doesn't, then we'll do something else. No, that is not working. Okay. All right, we're going to give this one last try. Okay, so now if okay, we're going to do it like that. All right. So here we go. This is Stephanie Weaver. Thanks so much for being here. And I'm with the Migraine Relief Plan, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then get right into our content, which is 10 everyday things that you might be doing that make migraines worse and what to do instead. So first, I'd like for you to turn everything off, close your email, turn your phone to vibrate, and just try to be with us and be really present today for the next 45 minutes or so, because you'll get the most out of it if you're not multitasking. And I know I'm a big multitasker, so I also need to be reminded of this as well. So if you signed up in advance, you should have gotten a worksheet from me, but if not, no worries. And we're going to go on to just remind you to be present, to really get the most out of this, to pay attention is a great thing. And I hope that I can answer some of your questions at the end. And now just take a nice deep breath. Be really with us today. And it's a reminder for me as well. Anytime I have technology challenges, I can be a little stressed out about it. So I'm going to try to also take a nice deep breath. This is time that is going to help you feel better. It's my hope, because I'm sharing a lot of strategies that have really helped me, and I hope that it will help you as well. And congratulations for taking some time out of your day to attend. I'm really happy that you're here. There will be some gifts at the end, so stay tuned for that, and I'll let you know what those are at the end of the presentation. And one of the things I want you to think about is if there was a scale of 1 to 10 and you want to improve your migraine experience, where would you be on that scale? Would you be like not so passionate or super passionate? For me, I was absolutely an 11. I really wanted to improve my life experience and the experience that I was having with the number and severity of migraines. And I want to tell you kind of a low point for me was when I was first diagnosed and was having all the crazy vertigo attacks, which is how I got diagnosed. My migraines were atypical migraines, so I was later in life diagnosed. And one day I was had been taken to the chiropractor. I was too dizzy to drive. I threw up at the chiropractor's office, and which was not fun in front of him. And then my husband drove me home. Our street was under construction at the time, and so we had to park around the corner from our house. And I said to him as we were walking home, "I don't think I'm going to make it to the house." And he said, "Oh, sure you are, sure you are." No, I did not. I threw up in the neighbor's yard in front of a whole bunch of construction workers. I did not even make it to the bathroom. And that was a bad day. That was a really low point for me. I thought, gosh, there has to be a better way. I can't live like this, or I don't want to have to live like this. So what's that day going to be like? How is that going to come to me? So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a patient some of the time. So I sit in doctor's offices with the bad lighting and fill out the forms just like you do. I also happen to have a Master of Public Health degree in nutrition education, which might not be like you. For the last almost 6 years, I've been writing a food blog. So I've developed over 300 recipes that are healthy and work for lots of different types of special diets. I'm also a technical writer and have been a sort of a how-to writer for 25 years. And if I were a dog, even though I love my golden retriever, I would be a terrier, because when I set my mind to something, I am absolutely passionate about figuring that out, and I will dig and dig and dig and dig until I get the answer. And in fact, if I were a movie character, I would be Daniel Day-Lewis in The Last of the Mohicans, because I was determined to find the answer. Not the girl, but the answer. So I also am a researcher, and so this is just a sampling of some of the books that I have read in the last 2 years to help me understand migraine better. I also have spent a fair bit of time at the medical library at the University of California, San Diego, at their medical school, which is unlike a lot of you probably. And I have to say that what I learned about migraine actually shocked me. I was shocked to learn some of the things that I did. And I'm not saying that to be, clickbait. I was just genuinely surprised at the things that I learned about migraine. One of the things that shocked me was that my super duper healthy diet was absolutely full of migraine triggers that were all completely unknown to me. And these are just a few examples. In fact, when I got home from the diagnosing visit with a neurologist, I was given a sheet of I'll talk about it in a minute, but basically it was like, here's a list of foods to eat, here's a list of foods to avoid. And when I got home and opened my refrigerator, and this is not my refrigerator, this is a picture of a refrigerator, I found that 75% of the food that was in my fridge at that point were migraine triggers, which was shocking to me and very upsetting and very daunting. What was I going to do? How was I going to eat? I also found that I was doing a whole bunch of things that unwittingly were affecting probably my migraine pattern, like being really irregular with when I went to bed and when I got up. I also learned that the insane light sensitivity that I've had my whole life is actually a migraine symptom, and light sensitivity and bright light can be a migraine trigger for a lot of people, including me. And I was also, okay, so I've never been this thin, and this poor girl really needs to eat. And I wish somebody was handing her like a big bowl of protein and not salad, but it was the only picture I could find that talked about skipping meals. So I was an irregular eater. I would eat a lot, and then I would skip meals. I'd get involved in things, and I was not eating on a regular basis throughout the day. I also had become convinced that fermented foods, which are really healthy foods, they're great for your gut bacteria and your inner microbiome, and those are super important things to be supportive of. But it turns out that they are very potentially strong migraine triggers, and I did not know that. I was making my own yogurt, I was making my own sauerkraut, and all kinds of other fermented foods when I was diagnosed. And I was not a workout person per se, but I was also a very irregular exerciser, and that is also an issue that I'll talk about. And I often would forget to drink water. I'm going to take a sip right now just to remind myself. So while water was my beverage of choice, I often would forget to refill my glass and not be drinking throughout the day. Now, I wasn't a total disaster. I did have a few things going for me. So one thing that I had going for me was that I was already gluten-free. And gluten can be a trigger for people, but also it's inflammatory, and that's the bigger issue with gluten. So I was already gluten-free and had been for 8 or so years at that point. I'd also given up processed food and sugar about 10 years prior, so I had that going for me. I also love to cook, which is really helpful. And I was an expert at renovating recipes and taking ingredients out and swapping them in for other ingredients that met particular diet needs. So I had a lot of options in terms of things in my corner that were going to help me. And I'd also had an unusual experience that most people don't have who are maybe watching this now or in the replay, is that I've already changed my diet a number of times. I was put on an allergy-friendly diet. I had to do a food elimination diet. I've been vegetarian. I've been vegan. I was gluten-free. So I'd done those things, pretty dramatic diet changes 7 different times in my life, which most people don't have that experience. So I knew that I had that going for me. I also had a starting point, which a lot of people might not even be given this sheet by their doctor, which is the low tyramine headache diet. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, it gave me a starting point of where to start researching and what to look at. And because I was a food blogger, I had resources, so I could email my friends who were food bloggers and say, hey, I'm supposed to go low sodium. I'm supposed to go on this migraine diet. Do you know anybody who can help me? And I talked with Donald Gazaniga, who runs a website called megaheart.com, and also Jess at Sodium Girl. They were both incredibly helpful and generous. And when I was feeling really lost, they were super helpful. And I was pretty determined to figure it out because I did not want to be throwing up in front of construction workers anymore if I didn't have to. In fact, I was kind of Daniel Day-Lewis and a terrier combined. So you might be thinking at this point, all right, well, that maybe was slightly interesting about this person I don't know, but how does this help me, right? Because that's why you're here. You want to feel better. So let's get into what are those 10 everyday things that might be making migraines worse for you, and then what are the things that you can do instead? Well, I mentioned that I was very irregular in my sleep patterns, and that is a big problem for people with migraine. Apparently, migraine brains, because they're wired a little differently, that's the theory now, they're very sensitive to changes, and especially nocturnal and diurnal changes and circadian rhythms, and they're sensitive to weather changes. They're sensitive to a lot of stuff. So the more regular your life is, the better for your migraine. So try to go to bed the same time every night. And I know that's really hard, including on the weekends. And so I've, over time kind of figured out what works for me in terms of getting to bed. And I try really hard to follow that. I also try to get up at the same time every single day, but I really try. And I used to not pay any attention to this whatsoever. I try to limit my screens, whether that's TV, computer, or phone, or laptop, tablet, about an hour before bed, because screens emit a blue light that affects our melatonin release, and melatonin is our natural sleep hormone. So if you only read on a tablet, that's okay, but just turn the brightness down as much as possible. But I still read traditional books before bed because they are really good at helping me fall asleep. And one supplement that has been found to be very helpful is magnesium. So take a magnesium supplement about an hour before bedtime. and you should find that it will help you sleep better. It also has some other health benefits, and it seems to be that people who get migraines maybe are low in magnesium, so it has a secondary benefit there. So let's talk about processed food. Now, you may be somebody who eats a lot of processed food or someone who never touches the stuff. But I'll tell you why processed food is an issue, and then you can decide for yourself whether you want to make that change or not. It contains a lot of ingredients that are not particularly helpful in terms of both migraine and general health. So most most processed food is going to include some kind of soy product. Even if it doesn't say soy on the label, there will probably be soybean oil, soy protein, a protein isolate, any kind of type of soy is probably in that processed food. And that is an issue because soy is a very powerful migraine trigger for a lot of people. The second issue is that if there's soy or corn, like in corn syrup, in the food, that means that it's very likely, like 90% likely, that it is a GMO type of soy or corn. And the problem with GMO food, aside from the genetically modified part of it, which we don't actually know what that's going to do to us long term, eating genetically modified foods. But let's just say that there's no issue with that. The reason they were genetically modified to begin with was to allow them to be sprayed with a product called Roundup or glyphosate. And that allows them to, basically they spray the fields, it kills all the weeds, it doesn't kill the plant because the plant's been genetically modified to resist that glyphosate, that chemical, that herbicide, and then they can be harvested. And they actually spray glyphosate on wheat to make it ripen faster. And that means that that food, that 90% of all the soy, and because that's in the corn, is going to be GMO. It means it's going to have traces of glyphosate. And the issue with eating that is that it kills the good bacteria in your gut. And having a disturbed microbiome can also be an issue for migraine. And there can also be other triggers in processed food, but those are the big reasons why. Next up is artificial sweeteners. Aspartame is an issue for migraine because it's made up of two molecules that are both excitotoxins, meaning that they excite your brain, which is not good for people with migraine. And then they break down into a third chemical, which is a wood alcohol, which is formaldehyde, which is really bad for your liver. So that's why I don't recommend artificial sweeteners in there. And these foods, because they're designed by very smart food scientists to have this perfect blend of fatty, salty, and sweet, they're absolutely designed to be addictive. So it's not your imagination that if you open a bag of Cheetos or Doritos or anything like that, that you feel compelled to eat the entire bag. That is not a problem with your willpower. It is the fact that that food was designed to be addictive in that way. So how do you deal with this? Well, work towards eating whole foods. Try to start making some swaps to get some of these products out and just whole foods in, things that are in the outer perimeter of the grocery store is a great place to start. I'm going to take another sip of water so I don't get dehydrated. Now, a lot of migraine experts don't agree on which foods are food triggers and some of the different aspects, but everybody agrees that dehydration is a big problem. It's a known trigger for most people. So the easiest solution there is to drink more water. Now, you can drink other beverages, but there are generally issues with other beverages, which I'll talk about a little later. So, flavored water, infused water, you can make herbal tea as long as it doesn't have triggers in it. But just try to drink as much, not like crazy amounts of water. You don't have to drink 20 glasses a day, but just be sipping it throughout the day so that you're making sure that you're not dehydrated. As I said, herbal teas, if you can tolerate decaffeinated green tea, organic green tea, it's very high in antioxidants, which does help with inflammation. So that's a good option if you aren't too sensitive to it. Now here's back to our thin girl who really needs some actual food that someone needs to sit her down and give her some like nice protein and fat and healthy food. But the problem with irregular meals, it's very easy if you get busy to skip meals, to skip breakfast, to eat late, to eat early. And the problem with that is that that's affecting your blood sugar. And blood sugar levels are really critical in terms of whether or not you're going to help trigger a migraine. So I really try to eat throughout the day. I try to pay attention to when I'm hungry. I try to, if I don't have like a super hearty breakfast, I may have a snack around 10 in the morning. I have a nice generous lunch, and then usually a snack around 4 o'clock, and then a dinner between 6 and 7. And I really try to make sure that I have healthy fats in there so that I've got that nice blood sugar that doesn't spike or doesn't drop, that it's just nice and level. Now, that's another reason why I don't recommend that people with migraines do a fast or a cleanse, because generally you're not getting enough calories, and you can see some pretty significant blood sugar drops on those, and then you will almost invariably get a migraine, and that's kind of counterproductive to whatever reason why you're doing a fast or a cleanse. So, if you don't want to eat 5 or 6 meals, small meals throughout the day, then 3 meals and 2 snacks is fine. Make sure, obviously, those are healthy snacks and whole foods. So let's move on to aged and fermented foods. Now, you may not, have many of these in your diet, or you may have a lot like I did, and this is something that I really didn't understand. There's a couple of things that are going on with these foods that may be contributing to them being migraine triggers. Now, not everyone is sensitive to these compounds, but I'll tell you, kind of what the theory is around them. They contain higher amounts of something called tyramine, which is an amino acid compound that is the amino acid tyrosine breaks down into tyramine. It's a natural thing that occurs in food, so it's not harmful for you. It seems that some people, and I'm one of those people, is very sensitive to that. So any aged or fermented food is going to be much higher in levels of tyramine. It may also be higher in levels of other things like glutamates, which can be a trigger for people. And this is documented for some people. So older foods, stuff that's been sitting in the fridge a long time, can also be higher in tyramine. And so the way around this is just to choose fresh foods as much as possible. And then you can test some of these foods if you really like eating them to see, and maybe you just can't eat, like I was eating multiple ones a day. I was having miso soup and sauerkraut and vinegar and, fermented, cheese and things all in the same day. So you may still be able to have some of these foods, but not as many as maybe you originally were. The biggest factors that seem to be the case for a lot of people, and not everyone, would be cheese, especially aged cheese, wine, beer, and processed meats. And these are the healthy foods, and I say that, in kind of quotation marks, that were an issue for me. Things like kombucha and miso, kefir and sauerkraut, which are all super high in probiotics, which are great for you, but may be an issue in terms of migraine. So what I do every day is I take a probiotic capsule. I take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach so that it has its chance to kind of get in there and do that good work and repopulate, my good gut bacteria if it needs it. And I try to really limit these aged and fermented foods as much as possible now, because I know that I am very sensitive. Now, number 6 is an interesting challenge for people with migraine, because if you're not feeling well, going out and exercising doesn't sound very fun. And it's also been documented that if you have an intense exercise session, that can actually trigger a migraine. Same with sex, actually can trigger migraine for people. So in today's society, we all have pretty sedentary lifestyles, and that's a tough thing to fight. So what I'm not suggesting is that you go out and buy a gym membership and, start, tell you have to work out, 60 minutes a day, or go to, Crunch Fitness or whatever. But just start thinking about regular, gentle movement. And so what I've done is I've built in walks into my day. I get up, I walk the dog for about 30 to 45 minutes in the morning. And that's not like a super fast pace, but it's a nice, decent pace. And I built up to that over months of kind of getting out there. And then I do, a little walk mid-morning. I try to do a little walk in the afternoon, and then we walk over to the dog park in the evening. And I do some other things here and there, but that's basically my movement pattern, which has helped me a great deal. Once you feel a little better, you can start building up to more aerobic exercise, but really pay attention to how you're feeling and whether or not that's something that's making it better or making it worse for you. And one of the things that's really cool is that there is some research around this, and they found that a lot of people are given a drug called topiramate or Topamax as a preventive. So people who have chronic migraine or chronic headache will often, the doctor will say, well, I want you to take this, and you take it every day, and there's all these side effects. But exercise in one study was found to be just as effective. So at about a 50% drop in migraines in the study participants, whether they exercised or whether they took topiramate. And of course, exercise only has positive side effects, not negative side effects. So that's really encouraging. Now, we talked a little bit about processed food earlier, but sugar is such an important component of our daily diet these days that I wanted to talk about it just on its own. As I mentioned, it's in nearly every processed food that's manufactured. Whether or not that food is sweet or savory, there is a lot of sugar in it. And many, many health experts are now super concerned about the amount of sugar that we're eating on an ongoing basis. So no matter what kind of sugar you eat, even honey, even maple syrup, even, coconut sugar, it all supports inflammation in the body. And that's a problem because an inflamed body and an inflamed brain is much more likely to have a migraine attack. It's just sort of the perfect condition for migraine. So that's why, not because I'm a killjoy, and believe me, I love sugar as much as the next person, maybe more, but I have really cut way back because once I found this out. And so what I do, and I'm not hardcore about this, I do use small amounts of natural sweeteners in some of my recipes. But if I need a sweetener, I will use powdered organic stevia. I found one that doesn't have an aftertaste to me. And that's what I recommend. That's what the recipes in my book have. But I also use fruit to sweeten things. But that's something that I worked towards over time. It wasn't something I did overnight, but certainly was a big part of me understanding what was going on with my migraines. Now, here's some environmental things that you may or may not be aware of. And since learning about this, I've really been able to make some great shifts in my migraine pattern. So not just food is an issue. There's also environmental triggers for migraine. People can be sensitive to different types of lighting. They can be sensitive to scents and smells and odors. They can be sensitive to weather. But these are the things that we can actually control is what we're talking about here. So those buzzy fluorescent light fixtures or those horrible gas vapor lamps that are in big box stores, those will just nail me every time in terms of migraine. I mean, even sometimes a light with a fan, because it'll have like a strobe effect depending on how the light is coming in the room, can be an issue. Or driving in the car can be an issue if there's kind of strobing effects. Also, as I mentioned, strong smells, perfume, bleach, gasoline can be triggers for people. So my recommendation here is to change what you can control in your home environment. Figure out if there's things at work that you can change or at least ask to have changed. And then, kind of do what you can with this area. Now, there's two companies that make migraine glasses specifically that block certain spectrums of light. One is called Theraspex, and a new company that I just found out about is called Axon, AXON Optics. So those are something to look into if you have to work in an environment where the lights cannot be changed, they can't make any accommodation for you. This could be something, and you're staring at a computer all day. Purchasing a pair of $130 glasses might really be worth it for you. Now, number 9 is caffeine. And, caffeine is something that a lot of people use to manage their migraines. And there's a reason for that. in the short term, caffeine does work. It has a dilating effect on blood vessels, and there is a blood vessel component to migraine. Now, that's not the cause of it, and that's not the main reason that we have migraine is the vascular side, the blood vessel side. But there is an effect that caffeine has that does seem to help in the short term. So a lot of people will, drink a Diet Coke, or they'll drink a Coke or a Dr. Pepper, or they'll take Excedrin migraine, which has caffeine in it. And that's what they use to manage their migraine. The issue with this is that in the long term, if you're doing this on a regular basis, it can create rebound headaches and cause you more pain and more headaches over time. So just be really aware of this. If maybe it's something to do where you want to track a little bit to see how much caffeine you're using, because it may be that you're unwittingly creating more headache days for yourself because you're using it too much. So chocolate is another place where you find caffeine, and regular tea. So just be aware of that and start looking for substitutes. As I said, if you can tolerate decaffeinated green tea, sometimes it's even too strong for me. I'm very sensitive to caffeine, so I've never really used it because I can't. And carob it's not chocolate, but I've developed some recipes that use carob that are pretty reasonable substitutes for that sort of chocolatey-esque flavor, as long as you're not expecting it to taste exactly like chocolate or a brownie. And our number 10 item that might be making migraines worse is sodium. And very few people have been looking at this or talking about this. But it is known that high salt meals can be triggers in and of themselves. So like a restaurant meal or a fast food meal, restaurants are known to use a lot of salt. The chefs all kind of get used to that level of salt, and partly because it enhances the flavor of the food, but also because it makes people thirstier and they order more drinks. And so there's an actual strategy towards that. So that is an issue right there. Next, if you have any kind of dizziness symptoms, vertigo symptoms, Meniere's disease, these often are part of the migraine pattern and spectrum, and sodium seems to affect that very strongly. So if you have any of those kind of symptoms, cutting back on your sodium over time should definitely help with that. Now, there's another issue with salt in that it's in so much processed food, and that is white bleached salt. And there's been some new studies that have shown that it's a possible indicator in autoimmune illnesses. And there's a number of doctors that do believe that migraine is an autoimmune illness. So that's another reason to cut way back. Now, if you like to have a little salt at the table, that's fine. If you can find iodized sea salt, that's a great option. And I don't cook with it anymore, but I use it at the table. So I do enhance the flavor, but right where I'm going to actually taste it, and not, building it into all the cooking. And then you have this much higher level and you're not really tasting it anyway. If you can't find iodized sea salt, no problem. Just make sure that you take a multivitamin that has iodine in it. And most multivitamin tablets do, so you don't have to worry about the amount. But you want to make sure you don't end up with any thyroid problems if you cut out all your salt and all your iodine. And again, here's another, encouragement to cook more of your own whole foods, because then you will be controlling the sodium level in the food that you're eating. And the last thing I want to tell you about is the sodium-potassium balance. Now, when before processed food, before industrial food, when people were eating whole foods, they were eating about the same amount of sodium as they did potassium in meals, or maybe 5 times more potassium than sodium, or maybe 10 times more potassium than sodium. So it was way skewed in the favor of potassium. Now, what's happened with the shift in our meals and eating more processed food and restaurant food is that now we're in the complete opposite direction. We might be having 10 times as much sodium as potassium, or 15 times as much sodium as potassium. And that is an issue for just our general health. So that's another reason to kind of cut back on sodium, just add it at the table, and really be focused more on whole foods. Now, I told you I was going to give you 10 everyday things, 10 tips to make that might make migraines worse. I'm going to give you actually 11. Here's a bonus tip for you. It's one of your first little gifts. So one of the things that I had no idea of is that foods that I was eating on a really regular basis, like citrus fruits and onions and vinegar, are all migraine triggers. I had absolutely no idea about that. And one of the reasons I developed my plan, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is because there's so many potential triggers that it's kind of overwhelming. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, that's not my intention. What I want to do is kind of give you this overview so you can understand that it's pretty complicated to figure this stuff out on your own. And so just take a deep breath right now because I do have a solution for you. I've created something called the Migraine Relief Plan. It's now online. And it's the thing that I wish I had when I was diagnosed. I so wish that someone had provided this so that I could sign up and have someone take me through all of the information that I needed so I could make my migraine experience better. It would have saved me so much time and so much money, and it would have been so much more enjoyable because I went off salt, cold turkey overnight, and then food tasted horrible for 7 weeks, and I do not recommend that. So let me tell you about a couple of people who've been through the Migraine Relief Plan with me and what their experience has been. So my first person that I wanted to introduce you to is Noelle. And what she learned, Noelle is someone who raises chickens in the Pacific Northwest. She is a vegetarian, but she eats eggs and some cheese. And so she tested the program with me when we developed it. And she really felt like it was just so helpful for her to understand, help her identify what her triggers were. Now, you may not feel like you need the migraine relief plan, and that's totally fine, but let me just tell you a little bit more about it. Christie was somebody who came in and said, I don't cook, I'm not going to cook, but I'm interested in the information. And she actually started cooking because of the plan and really enjoys it. And she also found that high salt foods were a huge trigger for her. And so she was really encouraged and saw her migraine pattern shift in a really positive way. So if you're losing more than 1 day a month to headaches or migraines, it's something you might want to consider. So if you were to join the Migraine Relief Plan, let me tell you a little bit about what you get. You get an 8-week course that gets you on the plan. So it's a gradual progression, so you don't do anything overnight. And especially if you're having 3 to 5 migraine days or headache days a week, you don't have to stress out about doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's all been tested by migraine sufferers, so it's all doable. You get the materials exactly when you need them. So you get the assignment each week, you get the handouts to download, you can choose which ones you want to watch and which ones you want to look at. You also get 100% trigger-free, safe recipes. Now, this is the only place on the internet that you can get trigger-free, migraine-friendly recipes. And they've been tested, they're delicious, I make sure of it, and I feel really committed to that because I read so many migraine books where you'd open the page and the first recipe you would see would have oranges in it, and oranges are citrus fruits, and citrus fruits can be triggers. So I just vowed that my recipes were going to be 100% trigger free. You also get a community of other people who are focused on wellness. And there's other communities on the internet around migraine, and those communities are great and very helpful. I do find, though, that just hearing other people talk about how miserable they're feeling doesn't really make me feel better. And so my encouragement in my community, in the Facebook group, is that we talk about what's working for us and we focus on wellness. And I find that that is much more helpful to me on a day-to-day basis. So I want you to think about, if you have more pain-free days, what are you going to be able to do with those things? Are you going to be able to, go to Hawaii and enjoy it like I was able to do on this trip? So if you want to check it out, it's migrainereliefplan.com, and then you click on the register button. And once you've registered, you log in, and I'm just going to give you a little kind of behind the scenes tour, which you see as a member. You'll find all 8 weeks of the course in the member area. And you get videos. So while there's 90 full minutes of content, it's all broken up into about 3 to 4 minute little chunks of video. So you watch what you're interested in. You can go back and review things when you need it. And all those videos explain to you all the elements of the plan and the program. You also get something that no one else offers, and I encourage you to take advantage of it if you do join. At the beginning of week 2, and that can be either a Saturday or a Sunday, you click here in week 2, and it'll kick off what we call your Apple a Day emails. And that means that for 7 weeks, you get an email from me every single day with great extra bonus content. They're not long emails, but they are full of great information. And it's something that I found really helpful when I tried out another program. Was not migraine related, and getting that daily support really made a big difference for me. So I wanted to offer that for our members. You also get all of the recipes, and we're adding new content every single week. So unlike a lot of programs where you pay for just the content is what it is, this is a growing website. So every week, every Friday, I'm either adding a new recipe, a new how-to video, or a new interview or book review with a migraine expert. It's all migraine specific. And that includes things like book reviews and great handouts and shopping lists and dining out cards and lists of pantry staples, all the different things that might be helpful for you over time. Now, we also have a group, an online group on Facebook, which is, a lot of places they use forums, and I've always kind of hated forums. I find them really clunky and hard to navigate. I'm on Facebook all day long, so I figured I'm just going to have my group on Facebook. Right now, it's a public group. It may be a private group in the future. We'll kind of see how that goes, but it's a place where you can come right now and you can ask to join, and you don't have to be a paid member of the group to be part of the Facebook group, because you can be part of the community, and it's another way that I like to serve the community. And as I mentioned, we're adding new content every week. Now, I did, if you were able to sign up in advance, I did send out a worksheet, which you may or may not have gotten, so no worries. And if you want it after the fact, you can feel free to email me, and I'm happy to send it to you. But I just wanted to go through, so it's the costs of migraine. So sort of figuring out if you have to, buy medication and you go to the doctor and what your copay is, or if you're getting other treatments, like what does that cost you in a month? And what do you make in a day, your estimate, and how many days do you have to take off? And for me, all of that added up to $6,540 a year. That's what I was estimating that migraine was costing me. That's a lot of money. And that's a lot of money that I would much rather be spending on other fun things like a vacation, for example. And that is only taking 3 medications, only seeing the doctor 3 times a year. So you may see the doctor more often. That's only missing 1 day of work a month. And it still came out to over $6,000. So when you figure out your costs, then the question is an investment of $347 in this course worth it to you? If it had been available, I would have paid much more for this program, because you don't have to read all the labels. I've done all that for you. And you don't have to go to the medical research library and do research and read hundreds of migraine-related articles. I've done that for you. And you don't have to read a stack of books, because I've already done that for you. You don't have to dive in and figure out which of these many migraine trigger lists is the best one. I did that for you too. And you also don't have to give up anything overnight. The program has figured all that out for you. So you just have to make an investment in yourself. And if you want to join, which we'd love to have you, you do the easy assignment each week, and you make gradual changes over time. So over that 8-week course, you're slowly shifting over to a migraine-friendly lifestyle. You're getting more regular sleep. You're getting more regular exercise. You're eating more regularly throughout the day. You're getting the triggers out of your life. You're cutting back on caffeine and sodium and sugar. That's all built into the program. And then what we recommend that you do is you follow it for 4 months, and then you can start adding foods back. You can start testing foods to see what's actually bothering you and what isn't. And you'll start to see your investment paying off. So one of the last things I'll leave you with is, what are pain-free days worth to you? I know that for me, I went from having a migraine or a headache every single day. In fact, I'd had headaches every single day for so long that I wasn't even aware I was having them until they went away. Probably 10 years, maybe 20 years. Every single day I had a headache. And 1 to 3 migraine days a week. Those had gotten worse. The vertigo started happening. The vomiting started happening. It was pretty bad. I couldn't really function very well. Now, every day when I wake up, no headache, which is incredible to me. It's absolutely bliss. And 1 to 2 migraine days a month, and those are usually for me triggered by a very particular weather pattern that we have here in San Diego, or flying. And I can't seem to do much about those. But that is an incredible change for me. It changed my life. And I really hope that it can change your life too, because I've seen it with some of the people that have worked with me so far. This is Sarah. Sarah was having 3 to 5 migraine days a week when she joined, and we went through the original class. She would show up. We were doing Google Hangouts at that time. She would show up. You could tell she was absolutely miserable, but she did not miss a single class because she really wanted to understand what she could do to make herself feel better. And she found out that sugar was a huge trigger for her. So she told me up front, I'm a picky eater. I probably won't make a single recipe. And I was like, that's fine. Whatever is going to work for you, just give it a shot. And, it was a few months after the program ended. So she'd been on the plan for a few months. And I was checking in saying, how are you guys feeling? What's going on with you? And she wrote back and she said, I really didn't think that it had made much difference, truthfully. She said, I didn't make any of the recipes. You knew I wasn't going to cook. I did cut out sugar. But she said, you know what? I was missing, I was calling in sick like twice a week. And I was worried about losing my job. And I just realized that I haven't called in sick in more than a month. And so something's working for me. And that's enormous for people. It's important to be able to keep your job. It's important to be able to continue working and to make money and to support yourself and to be out in the world. And so that's what I'm hoping for people who join the plan. And I really want to help you change your pattern as well. So let me tell you about, I said there were going to be presents. So let me tell you about the presents. So the program price is $347, but if you use this code webinar200 today, you get $200 off. So everything I just described is now $147. So this code is good today, and it will expire tomorrow. So if you're interested in doing this, webinar 200, you got to use it today. It's okay if you can't decide today. If you're on my email list, you'll get an email tomorrow with another discount code. It won't be as big as today's code, but it'll be very nice. So, feel free if you're interested. You can also email me if you don't get that email to get that code. Now, when you sign up, you'll get everything I already showed you. But what I didn't mention is that it's a 1-year membership. A lot of these classes, they're 21 days or they're 28 days online, and that's it. 21 days is up, your access is gone. This is different. This is an entire year membership because I want you to be part of our community. I want you to be sharing recipes. I want you to be living the lifestyle and sharing your tips and teaching other people and feeling better. So it's a 1-year membership. It's not just the 8 weeks. So you get a year of support and encouragement and new recipes and how-to videos and resources. And I hope that this feels worth it to you, especially at the discounted price of $147. So I hope you'll join us. And if you have any questions, you can write them in the comments on YouTube, or you can send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. So that's class@migrainereliefplan.com. You can send me an email. I'm happy to answer questions there. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to take a look over here to see if anybody's left any questions, and I'm not seeing anyone. So I am going to sign off. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.